Most people overestimate their memory. They believe they'll remember the thought that came to them while driving, the insight they heard in a meeting, or the dream they imagined late at night. But the truth is, memory is unreliable. The mind is wonderful for creating ideas, but terrible for storing them. That's why you must write things down. The faintest ink will always outlast the strongest memory. Think of how many ideas you've lost simply because you didn't capture them. A great business concept, a solution to a problem, a moment of clarity about your goals. You thought to yourself, I'll remember this, but then life happened, distractions, phone calls, obligations, and the idea slipped away forever. That's the cost of not writing things down. The richest people, the most effective leaders, the wisest teachers, they all carry notebooks. They understand that the human brain is a river, not a reservoir. It flows with thoughts, but it does not store them. To keep the water, you must build a container, and that container is your pen and paper. Writing is not just about remembering. It is about transforming. When you take a thought from your head and put it on paper, it becomes more real. You can see it, shape it, refine it. A dream on paper starts to look like a plan. A plan broken into steps starts to look like a goal. And a goal, reviewed daily, starts to look like destiny. Without writing, thoughts remain abstract, floating in the air. With writing, they take shape, become concrete, and demand action. Writing also deepens understanding. Have you ever noticed that when you write something down, you remember it better? That's because writing doesn't just record information, it reinforces it. You teach it to yourself a second time. That's why students who take notes by hand often learn faster than those who simply listen. Writing locks in the lesson. Another reason to write things down is accountability. When your goals live only in your head, they can be changed, delayed, or forgotten without consequence. But when you put them on paper, they become a contract. They stare back at you each morning, reminding you of the promises you made to yourself. The paper doesn't forget, and it doesn't lie. If you wrote down that you will lose 10 pounds, start a business, or save a certain amount of money, then every time you see those words, you are confronted with the truth. Writing holds you accountable in a way memory never can, and writing also gives you perspective over time. Imagine keeping a journal for a year, even just a few lines a day. At the end of that year, you can look back and see your progress, your struggles, your victories. You can measure growth not by vague feelings, but by written record. You can trace patterns in your behavior, learn from mistakes, and celebrate milestones. Without writing, all those experiences blur together. With writing, you have a roadmap of your journey. Great achievers throughout history knew this. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal. Leonardo da Vinci filled notebooks with sketches and ideas. Thomas Edison wrote down thousands of experiments. They didn't trust their memory, they trusted their pen. If people of such genius needed to write things down, how much more do we? Some people resist writing because they think it takes too much time. But the truth is, it saves time. An unclear mind wastes hours trying to remember what was once so clear. A written plan saves you from indecision. A captured idea saves you from regret. Writing is not a chore, it's an investment. A few seconds with your pen can preserve a thought that could change your entire life. And here's the best part, writing doesn't just record the past, it creates the future. When you write your vision, your goals, your values, you are not only capturing ideas, you are shaping who you will become. The act of writing clarifies your thinking and sharpens your focus. It turns someday into this year. It turns I should into I will. So never underestimate the power of the pen. Carry a notebook. Keep a journal. Write your goals where you can see them. Don't rely on memory to guard the treasures of your mind. Memory is unreliable, but writing preserves ideas. And those ideas, preserved, nurtured, and acted upon, can transform your life. Dreams are beautiful. They give us hope, energy, and imagination. But let me tell you something important. Dreams by themselves don't change your life. Dreams are only the beginning, not the end. The real transformation happens when you take that dream out of your head, put it on paper, and give it a form that you can work with. Writing transforms dreams into actionable goals, You see, the mind is a wonderful place for ideas, but it's also a dangerous place to leave them. Ideas float around, they get interrupted by distractions, crowded out by worries, or simply fade away with time. How many times have you thought of something brilliant only to forget it by the next day? That's the tragedy of not writing it down. A dream unrecorded is a dream easily forgotten. But something powerful happens the moment you take pen to paper. A vague thought becomes a clear statement. A dream becomes a declaration. Suddenly, it's not just imagination anymore, it's a blueprint. Writing gives your dreams direction. It's like taking a cloud and shaping it into a mountain. The mountain can be climbed, the cloud cannot. When you write your goals, you're also making a contract with yourself. Think about it. As long as a dream lives only in your mind, there's no real accountability. You can tell yourself, someday I'll do it, and keep pushing it further into the future. But when you write it down, it stares back at you. It becomes a commitment you've made in ink, and the ink doesn't forget. Writing also forces clarity. You can't just scribble, I want to be successful, and leave it there. What does success mean? In what area? By when? Writing makes you define the dream. It makes you turn a fuzzy hope into a sharp goal. You start to ask yourself the right questions. What do I want? Why do I want it? How will I get it? That process of writing pushes you from daydreaming into planning. And once the plan is on paper, something amazing happens. You start to see the steps. The dream doesn't look so impossible anymore. Let's say you dream of writing a book. In your head, it feels huge, maybe even overwhelming. But when you write it down as a goal, you can break it into parts, outline the chapters, write 1 page a day, edit in the evenings. Suddenly, the impossible becomes possible. The mountain becomes a set of steps you can climb. Writing also acts like a reminder system for your own mind. Every time you read what you've written, it reinforces your focus. It brings you back on track. It keeps your attention where it belongs. Because let's be honest, the world is full of distractions. If you rely only on memory, life will pull you in 1,000 directions. But if you've written your goals down, you have a compass that keeps pointing you back to your destination. There's another hidden benefit of writing. It captures not only the dream, but also the journey. When you keep a record of your goals and the steps you've taken, you create a trail of progress. You can look back months or years later and see how far you've come. That's powerful motivation. Success leaves clues, but only if you write them down. I remember once hearing the phrase, the faintest ink is stronger than the strongest memory. That's wisdom worth carrying, because one note in a journal can change your life years later. One written goal can redirect your destiny. One sentence on paper can outlast 1,000 moments of wishful thinking. So my challenge to you is simply don't just dream, right? Don't just imagine, document. Don't just hope, plan. Carry a notebook. Keep a journal, use a planner. It doesn't matter how fancy it is. What matters is that it's yours. Let it hold your dreams, your goals, your lessons, your reflections. Because here's the truth, writing transforms dreams into actionable goals. And actionable goals are what turn ordinary people into extraordinary achievers. Dreams may inspire you, but written goals will drive you. Dreams may give you vision, but written goals will give you direction. Dreams may make you believe, but written goals will make you act. Your future is too important to be left floating in your imagination. Put it on paper. Give it shape. Give it steps. Give it life. Because once you write it down, you've already taken the first step from possibility to reality. And that step can change everything. Writing reinforces commitment and focus. That simple act of putting pen to paper can be the difference between a dream that fades and a destiny that unfolds. Most people underestimate. They think, oh, I'll remember. I don't need to write it down. But here's the truth. The human mind was designed to be a storage system. It was designed for creativity, for problem solving, for imagining possibilities. But memory is fragile. The best of ideas, if left floating in your head, will slip through your fingers like sand. That's why writing is powerful. When you write it down, you don't just save the thought, you strengthen it. You engrave it in your mind and you create a reference point for your future. Think about this. An unwritten goal is nothing more than a wish. You can talk about it, you can daydream about it, you can even get excited about it. But until you write it down, it isn't real. Writing turns that vague thought into a commitment. It moves it from the invisible world of ideas into the visible world of action. And when you see your goals on paper every day, they have a way of staring back at you. They remind you of the promises you made to yourself. They challenge you when you feel like giving up. They bring you back to focus when distractions knock at your door. That's the power of writing. It keeps you centered. It keeps you accountable. Let me tell you something else. Writing is not just about goals, it's also about lessons. Life is always teaching. Every day is a classroom. But the problem is most people never take notes. They go through experiences, they face challenges, they learn insights, and then they forget. Imagine how much wisdom is lost because people didn't write it down. A journal becomes more than paper. It becomes your library of progress, your personal treasure chest of lessons that can be revisited and shared. I've often said, the faintest ink is stronger than the best memory. Why? Because ink doesn't fade as fast as memory does. If you carry a notebook, you carry with you a collection of seeds. Seeds of ideas, seeds of opportunities, seeds of discipline. And when the time is right, you can plant them. But if you don't capture them, they're gone forever. Here's something interesting. Writing also multiplies the effect of thinking. When you write, you are not just recording information, you are reinforcing it. You think it once when the idea enters your mind, then you think it again when you write it down. That double process makes the idea stronger, clearer, sharper. You're more likely to remember it, act on it, and build with it. I often meet people who say, I want to achieve something great. I have big dreams. And I ask them, have you written it down? Most of the time, the answer is no. And that's why their dreams remain dreams. A dream without writing is like a building without a foundation. It looks good in imagination, but it collapses in reality. Now let's talk about focus. We live in a world of constant distraction. Notifications, messages, conversations, responsibilities. Everything is pulling at your attention. Writing helps you regain control. When you write down what truly matters, your priorities, your goals, your strategies, you take charge of your day instead of letting the day take charge of you. Writing simplifies. Writing clarifies. Writing eliminates confusion. And here's the beautiful part. What you write today can guide you tomorrow. Imagine picking up a notebook you filled 5 years ago. You'll see the thoughts, goals, and lessons of your younger self. Some goals you will have achieved. Some lessons you will have grown from. And some ideas may still be waiting for you to act on. That's the long-term power of writing. It becomes your personal history book of growth. So I encourage you, never trust your memory with something important. Trust your pen. Carry a notebook. Write your goals, your dreams, your reflections, your victories, your failures, your lessons. Don't let life slip through your mind without leaving a record. Because writing doesn't just preserve ideas, it strengthens them. Writing doesn't just record goals, it reinforces commitment. Writing doesn't just capture moments, it gives them meaning. In the end, the most successful people are not always the most talented, the most educated, or the most connected. They are often the most disciplined. And one of the simplest disciplines you can practice is the discipline of writing. Write it down, reinforce it, review it, act on it. Because the words you put on paper today may just become the future you live tomorrow. Writing creates accountability. It is one of the simplest, most overlooked, and yet most powerful habits a person can develop. A thought in your head is invisible, intangible. No one sees it, no one measures it, and after a while, even you may forget it. But the moment you write something down, it exists outside of you. It becomes real. It becomes visible. It begins to hold you responsible. You see, words spoken can be forgotten, but words written live on. And when you write down your goals, your commitments, or your ideas, you've given them weight. You've taken a dream floating in the air and nailed it to the wall where it stares back at you. That's accountability. If you say, I want to lose weight this year, and you only think about it, there's no pressure. It's just a passing thought. But if you take out a notebook and write, I will lose 20 pounds by December 31st, suddenly it feels different. It's no longer a casual wish, it's a written declaration. That statement can't be excused away as easily. It holds you accountable every time you look at it. This is why I urge people to keep journals, to write down goals, to capture commitments. Writing is not just a tool for memory, it is a tool for discipline. A person who writes down their goals every day is reminded of the life they are building. They cannot hide from their own words. Accountability is not always about other people watching you. The most powerful accountability comes from the promises you make to yourself and the honesty to measure whether you're keeping them. When you write something down, you set up a mirror that reflects your progress or your neglect. If you write, save 10,000 this year, and halfway through the year you see only 500 in your account, your own handwriting becomes a wake-up call. That's accountability at work, and accountability is what separates the dreamers from the doers. Everyone dreams, but only those who hold themselves responsible for action achieve. Writing sharpens that responsibility. It's easy to let yourself off the hook when nothing is written, but it's hard to ignore a goal that's staring back at you from a page. Think about it. Businesses run on accountability. They keep ledgers, records, statements, written proof of performance. Nations run on accountability, laws, constitutions, agreements, all written down. Imagine a country where nothing was written, where promises were only verbal. It would collapse in days. So why should your personal life be run any differently? If nations and businesses depend on writing to enforce accountability, shouldn't your goals demand the same? Here's another truth writing reduces excuses. When you have no record, it's easy to tell yourself, I'll get to it later, or I think I'm doing enough. But when it's written, you can't lie to yourself. A blank page where yesterday's progress should have been is evidence. You either did the work or you didn't. Writing makes the truth plain. But there's also a positive side to accountability. When you write and follow through, you get to celebrate your progress. You see in black and white the victories you've earned. You see the boxes checked, the goals achieved, the plans completed. Writing not only calls you out when you're lazy, it congratulates you when you're disciplined. That balance of truth and reward is what keeps you moving forward. And here's something else to remember. When you write, you leave behind a trail. Someday, someone else may pick up your journal, your notes, your goals, and they'll see how you lived. Writing doesn't just hold you accountable in the present, it creates a record of accountability that outlives you. That's legacy. So don't underestimate the power of pen and paper. Don't assume your mind will carry the weight of your goals. Writing is a contract. It's you saying, I give my word and here it is in ink. And once it's written, you've raised the stakes. You've given your goal a witness, even if that witness is yourself. In the end, success is not about what you think you might do someday. It's about what you commit to doing and hold yourself accountable for. Writing creates that bridge from thought to action, from excuse to execution, from intention to achievement. So take your pen, open your notebook, and start writing. Write your goals. Write your commitments. Write your dreams. Let the words hold you accountable, because without accountability, the best of intentions will fade. But with accountability, even the smallest goals gain the strength to grow into great achievements. Writing creates accountability, and accountability creates success. Writing tracks growth and progress. Think about it, life is full of experiences, lessons, and opportunities, but without a way to measure them, we forget where we started and how far we've come. Most people go through life moving from one day to the next, but they don't stop to record, reflect, or capture the lessons they've learned. And because of that, they repeat mistakes, overlook victories, and miss the chance to see patterns that could change everything. The discipline of writing is not just about putting words on paper. It's about building a mirror for your journey. When you write, you create a record that doesn't lie, doesn't forget, and doesn't exaggerate. Memory fades, but ink remains. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is the ability to look back at where you were 6 months ago, a year ago, or 10 years ago, and see the progress you've made. Without that record, the days blur together, but with writing, you have proof of growth, proof of effort, proof of change. Have you ever felt discouraged, like you're not moving fast enough, or like your goals are still so far away? That's where writing becomes a lifeline, when you look back at an old journal entry or an old notebook and see where your mind was, where your habits were, where your goals were. You realize how far you've traveled. Maybe you haven't reached the finish line yet, but you've already left the starting line behind. That's progress. And without writing it down, you would never see it. Writing also helps you recognize patterns. If you write every day about your habits, your results, your energy, and your actions, you'll begin to notice connections. You might realize that every time you wake up late, the rest of your day suffers. Or that every time you eat better, your mind feels sharper. Or that every time you skip planning, the week becomes chaotic. These patterns are invisible when they live only in your head, but when written down, they reveal themselves like a roadmap. That roadmap can guide you to make better decisions and avoid the traps that hold you back. And let's talk about the victories. Life gives us many small wins, but most of them get lost in the business of everyday living. You accomplish something, and within a week, you've forgotten about it. But when you write it down, when you capture the moment, the feeling, the result, you preserve that win forever. Later, when you feel stuck or discouraged, you can open your journal and remind yourself, look at what I've done. Look at what I'm capable of. That's the power of written progress. It builds confidence and fuels momentum. Writing also sharpens thinking. The very act of putting your thoughts into words forces clarity. You may think you understand your goals, but when you try to write them down, you realize they are vague. Writing demands specificity. A goal in your head might sound like, I want to be healthier. But when you write it, you must define it. I want to lose 10 pounds in 3 months by exercising 4 times a week and eating clean. That's measurable. That's trackable. That's progress in motion. Another advantage of writing is accountability. When you write your plans, you can't hide from them. They stare back at you, reminding you of what you said you would do. If you wrote in January that by June you'd save a certain amount of money, and you read it again in May, there's no escaping it. The words you wrote hold you accountable. Writing creates a contract with yourself, and every time you read it, you're reminded of the promises you made. Even history proves the value of writing. The wisdom of centuries, the lessons of leaders, the philosophies of thinkers, all of it survived because someone wrote it down. Imagine if they hadn't, we'd be starting from zero every generation. Writing preserves knowledge, and on a personal level, it preserves your journey. One day, your notes could become the lessons that help your children, your friends, or even strangers. Your written progress can be someone else's roadmap, so never underestimate the power of a pen and paper. Don't let your growth disappear into the fog of memory. Don't allow your victories, your lessons, your turning points to vanish. Capture them. Track them. Write them down. Because when you do, you build a treasure chest of wisdom and evidence that your efforts matter. Writing is not just about recording the past, it's about guiding the future. In the end, progress isn't always measured in leaps and bounds. Sometimes it's measured in small, steady steps. And the only way to truly see those steps is to track them. Writing is how you measure where you've been, where you are, and where you're going. It turns invisible growth into visible proof. And that proof, my friends, is the fuel that will keep you moving forward toward the life you're meant to live. Ideas are fragile. They come to us like whispers, sometimes in the quiet of the night, sometimes in the middle of a conversation, sometimes while we are driving or walking or simply thinking. The tragedy is that most people never hold on to them. They let them drift away, believing they'll remember later. But the truth is, ideas have wings, and unless you capture them, they're gone. This is why writing becomes the bridge between what you imagine and what you ultimately create. Imagination is powerful, but imagination alone does not change lives. What you see in your mind can inspire you, but unless you transfer it onto paper, it will fade away like a dream you forget after waking up. Writing gives imagination form, shape, and structure. It transforms the invisible into something visible. A thought in your mind is only potential, but once written, it becomes a seed that can grow into something tangible. Think of it this way: every great invention, every book, every business, every speech, every movement that shaped history began with words written down. The Wright brothers had to sketch their flying machine. Thomas Edison recorded his experiments. Leaders, entrepreneurs, philosophers, they all wrote, not because writing was convenient, but because writing is necessary. It takes the chaos of thoughts and turns them into a roadmap. Without that process, imagination stays locked in your mind, a prisoner of forgetfulness. When you write down your goals, you don't just preserve them, you activate them. You tell yourself, this matters. A goal written down is no longer a passing wish, it becomes a commitment. A man who only dreams may never move, but a man who writes begins to plan, and a plan sets him on a path. That's the difference between those who hope for a better life and those who actually build one. Writing also strengthens your memory. The act of putting pen to paper imprints ideas twice, once in your mind and again in your hand. That repetition engraves the thought deeper than merely thinking or speaking it. And every time you revisit what you've written, the idea grows roots. That is why keeping a journal is one of the most powerful habits you can develop. It is more than a record. It is your personal instruction manual for growth. Another benefit of writing is accountability. When you write down your promises to yourself, they stare back at you. A goal hidden in your mind can be ignored, but a goal written in black and white demands your attention. It says, "You said you would. Now will you?" That is how writing builds discipline. It keeps you honest. It reminds you that success is not just about thinking, it is about acting. Writing also allows you to track your journey. When you keep notes and journals, you can look back and measure how far you've come. You see your progress, your victories, and yes, even your failures. But in those failures, you also see lessons that would have been lost had you never written them down. Reflection is only possible when you have something recorded to reflect upon, and here's something important: writing is not just about goals. It's about capturing inspiration, recording wisdom, storing the lessons you learn along the way. Life has a way of teaching you things at unexpected times. Maybe a mentor shares a truth, or you stumble across a revelation in a book, or you learn something from a painful mistake. If you don't write it down, you risk forgetting it. And forgotten lessons often need to be learned again, usually at a higher cost. Carrying a notebook, journaling daily, writing your goals, recording your ideas, these are not small habits. They are life-changing disciplines. Because in the end, the difference between those who achieve extraordinary things and those who let life slip by is not always intelligence, talent, or opportunity. More often, it is the discipline of capturing what matters and acting upon it. So don't trust your memory, trust your pen. Don't let imagination vanish into thin air. Build a bridge from thought to action, from dream to reality, from imagination to destiny, and that bridge is writing. Your future deserves more than fleeting wishes. It deserves a blueprint. It deserves a record. It deserves the discipline of words on paper, because one idea, one goal, one sentence you write down could be the very thing that transforms your entire life.